Your insiders today, Chris Johnston and Pierre Lebrun. So Tort's out in Philly a couple of days after saying that he wasn't really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season. Now, that sentence was the headline in a scrum, Pierre, where he essentially took responsibility for the way the team was playing. So is he fired now because of those words or just because of how bad the Flyers are?
Certainly not because of only what happened post-game Tuesday night. There was more behind the scenes in the lead up to all this, but it really escalated since then. And my understanding is that there were conversations and comments made by Tortorella with management behind the scenes that culminated with the decision to fire him. And what's interesting is that publicly there were a lot of comments from Tortorella in the last few weeks saying he understood the rebuild and the patience that it took. But behind the scenes, what we're learning now is that there was a lot of frustration and not everyone saw eye to eye on how things were playing out here as the Flyers really struggled, to the end of the season. So this was not the original plan. Danny Briere, the GM, would have wanted to wait until after the season to sit down with Torts and see where he is physically and mentally. He's 66 years old, had another year on his deal, and then make a decision. But this got forced on Flyers management to act now. And in the end, there is not a coaching search underway quite yet. This is how sort of surprised I think management was that they had to do this now, but they will undertake one. And Brad Shaw, the interim head coach, will be considered an in-house candidate, but I don't think he'll be a front runner.
Well, and that search may not be underway yet, Pierre, but people are already connecting Rick Tocchet, who's still coaching games for the Vancouver Canucks last I checked, to the Flyers. And look, I can understand it, a former Flyer and all that stuff, but I do think that kind of talk is premature. And there's still a process to play out between Tocchet and the Canucks. Obviously, the coaches focused, first of all, on trying to make the playoffs. They had a big win on Wednesday night on their road trip. And, I do think he is in the here and now. But beyond that fact, Tocchet does have a team option for next season. The team has to make a decision on, a couple days after the season. They've engaged with him on a possible extension. I just don't think that Tocchet knows exactly what he wants to do yet. So perhaps there is a world after the season's said and done that he is a free agent, but that is premature. Other candidates you might look around, though, think about, Joel Quenneville, been on the sidelines for a long time since last summer, being cleared to work in the NHL again. Or maybe even someone like David Carl, an up-and-comer, won a gold medal with Team USA at the recent World Junior Tournament, although he doesn't have NHL experience, and I do believe that's something the Flyers are going to prioritize here.
In Edmonton, the training table has gotten pretty crowded lately. McDavid, Draisaitl, Stuart Skinner banged up on Wednesday night. What's the timeline on 97, Chris?
Well, it's still being worked through. I think that there's certainly been no setbacks or anything that's caused more alarm, but they're going to get through the next few days. And I think at some point coming out of the weekend, there might be a little bit more clarity on when McDavid will be ready to return to the lineup. And specifically, you're looking at that trip next week. They go to California. Is he able to get in one or more of those games towards that trip? If not, they return home, and Edmonton has 5 more games to conclude the regular season. I think there's an expectation he'll certainly be ready for those 5. Whether or not he gets into a California game is what's up in the air. But either way, the Oilers are viewing this as a silver lining. Obviously, he's getting rest before the playoffs, and there still will be time for him to ramp up prior to that first-round series beginning.
And some other injury updates, Minnesota?
Yeah, just quickly, Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson back on the ice in Minnesota on this day. Very good news for a team that's having trouble scoring, seeing its position slide in the standings. Right now, here's the plan for the Wild. They're going to go on the road next week to New York with the team. Neither player is expected to play there, but there is a hope that they'll be able to continue skating and ramp up to return on the other side of that. But this has been a long stretch without 2 of the team's top forwards, and Minnesota obviously needs them with the wild card chase tightening up.
NHL and NHLPA meeting with the IIHF, Pierre. We know they're going to the Olympics, so is the World Cup the focus of these meetings, the more complicated deal?
It sure is, James. They're meeting early next week, and I think it's a pretty pivotal meeting in figuring out, perhaps once and for all, if the IIHF's going to be involved in the 2028 World Cup of Hockey. We know that they have, had some issues. One is the fact that the tournament's planned for February of 28, and I think the IIHF would have preferred it to be in a September tournament. But there are other things as well, and the NHL and NHLPA is hopeful that they can iron this out with the IIHF. They'd rather have them involved than not. But at the end of the day, if they can't figure this out, again, the NHL and NHLPA ready to move forward with the World Cup in 28 with or without the IIHF.
These talks, when they're just trying to figure out details, at least we know we're getting best on best next year and in 28 instead of the meetings in prior years where we never knew when it would be back.